Hey everyone, Tankenstein here, and welcome to another edition of Weak Spot Wednesday. In this video, I'll go over all the best weak spots of the IS-3 heavy tank from the Russians, and also give you tactics for how to defeat it in battle. I'll give you the 4 best weak spots to use against it if you have less than 200mm of armor pen in your current situation, and a final 4th shot if you have well in excess of over 250mm of armor pen, or better yet, if you have heat FS or some sort of sabot ammunition. For each weak spot, I'll go over which type of ammunition is best for that particular shot. Following my overview of the weak spots, I'll give you gameplay video and, again, go over the best tactics for how to defeat an IS-3 in a match. That said, let's get into it. For weak spot number 1, first and foremost, shoot along the side of the hull, but not where you might think. Along most of both sides of the IS-3 are tough armor belts that can provide upwards of 210mm of armor from a flat angle, making it so that most people will have a difficult time penning it in normal battle conditions, from a range and at an angle. This said, the substantially better shot is just below it, where the chassis is basically unprotected, with about 90mm of armor max, and at the very bottom of the chassis, only around 40 to 70mm of armor, depending on where you hit. What I mean by that is, even though this shows structural steel of 5mm, that's not accurate. But as you can see here, it's 90, and down here it's just as low as 20. So it's a real easy shot. What I mean by that is, as you can see, ricochet, you shoot into this and it'll just angle right there, and it just doesn't look good. 244mm. Some spots you do have pennable armor values, but they are still fairly high armor values. But again, right here, 90mm, and down here, even better. But I'll go over why in just a second, why that might not be the best shot at the very bottom where the armor is the lowest. Now, as I just mentioned, I would still aim for the 90mm armor max, just because at the very bottom of the chassis, where it's only around the 40 to 70mm of armor, it is a tougher shot to kill. So as you can see here, I'm shooting this with APHE, and it only does a little bit of damage on the interior, whereas if you shoot where it says 90mm of armor, that more or less hits the floor of it and just destroys the entire tank. So that's where you're going to want to shoot almost every single time. Now, this all said, it is absolutely imperative that you shoot this area of the tank for the least resistance and the best guarantee of a kill, especially if you have APHE ammunition. Now, alternatively, you can use AP, Heat FS, or sabot rounds as well, but sabot rounds and Heat FS kind of defeat the point, as they can also be fired at this area right here and do the job just about as well. But especially if you have APHE, again, you can just shoot right in, kill the crew, get an ammo rack if that doesn't work, and you will just defeat the tank almost every single time in one shot. Now, for your second weak spot, it's fairly close, and it will be the side of the turret, specifically where it bulges near the bottom. And this is because this is where typically the best angle of attack is, plus also the thinnest armor relative, again, to your angle of attack. You'll want to typically use APHE ammunition for this, and you can shoot it typically if you have less than 200mm of armor penetration. Of course, the more armor penetration that you do have, the farther up you can shoot in the turret, but of course that would just really make no sense when this shot is just as good, if not better, than any shot if you shoot up on the turret minus the cupola, which I will get to in just a moment. This being said, you will want to use APHE ammunition. AP ammo is decent as well, but typically APHE, just that way it can go into the turret, destroy the crew, and also ammo rack the vehicle. You could also use sabot rounds as well, but sabot rounds and Heat FS are kind of cheat codes versus tanks like this, and well, after 7.0 BR they do become more popular, so if you're having a tough time penetrating anyways, you can certainly use, again, sabot or Heat FS. And now for weak spot number 3, this is basically like a side turret shot, except actually a little bit better, although a bit more rare. So you'll want to shoot the rear of the turret right here, as you can see, typically between these two bars specifically, because this will provide you the best angle of attack and also the greatest chance to hit the ammo rack and also kill the crew if for whatever reason you do not ignite the ammo rack. So typically at this angle you should have between around 100, give or take. As you can see here, it's only 94 millimeters of armor pen that you need. at the very bottom. Of course, that is a very limited area. Between 100 and around 200 or so millimeters of armor pen, typically more or less up to around this area. There are some red areas, so they are a little bit random, so just kind of be on the lookout for that. But you will want to use APHE ammunition for this round. Now, of course, you could use Heat FS or Sabo. Those are good and they should ignite the ammo rack, but typically APHE will not only pen, but it should ignite the ammo rack as well, even if you're using a 76mm American cannon. You could use AP as well. I would rate that as the second best round for this when considering how common it is. But again, APHE will be the shot of choice for this weak spot. And now for weak spot number 4. This is basically a collection of two different very small weak spots at the front of the tank. Now, I couldn't give these one individual weak spot each just because they're so small and ultimately they're pretty close to each other and also could end up killing the tank. Now, that being said, the first weak spot will be right here at the top of the tank. Now, this is a very, very small weak spot indeed, as typically it will ricochet your shell, but if you hit it near kind of the bottom of where the angle starts to go up, typically again around this area, you should be able to pen it, especially if you have upwards of 200 millimeters of armor pen. So I'll go to the BR471D right here with 215 millimeters of armor pen. Let's say if I'm shooting it from straight on, it is again a very tiny shot to hit, but if you do get in, you will be able to destroy the entire turret crew. And this is best, of course, with APHE ammunition. Now, you should also be able to destroy the cannon breech, but this is a very, very difficult shot to hit. And really, the only spot that you'll be able to hit is give or take right about here. Again, which is why I couldn't call this its own weak spot. And now for weak spot number 4, part 2, you'll want to shoot more or less this area, particularly where it's almost kind of a triangular shape where the driver's view kind of sticks out. And this, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, is the driver's port. So it is a slightly better shot than above the gun mantlet on the turret, but you will want to shoot here. This is more or less a last resort shot, but if you have APHE, AP, Sabo, Heat FS, whatever the case may be, this may be your best shot to kill the tank if you're not having luck shooting any other part of the tank at the front. So always be aware of this spot on the tank. This tends to actually, just fun fact, be a weak spot in a lot of similar tanks of Soviet origin around this BR. So the T-10 has this weak spot, if I'm not mistaken, the IS-3, IS-6 if I'm not mistaken. Any real Soviet tank with this this pike frontal armor will more or less have this weak spot. So be on the lookout, and you should be able to pen right there, kill the crew, kill the ammo rack, whatever the case may be. This is a good weak spot, just a very, very small weak spot, and thus a last resort shot. Now, kind of as a side note here, the Commander's Cupola typically is an extremely large weak spot on any tank, be it German, Russian, even American tanks. They all have it. Now, on this tank specifically, it does not have a Commander's Cupola weakness, at least from the front. So as you can see here, really it's kind of blended in here, and this is where the Commander's Cupola is specifically. So if you try to aim for it from the front, you're not going to have good results. Realistically speaking, you probably won't be able to pen it, and you will have a better chance against, again, these shots that I mentioned before, again, on the driver's hatch. Again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, or the above mantlet kind of weak armor plate here. Now, where you can shoot the Commander's Cupola, and this is why I'm not including it as one of the weak spots, is from the side or the rear. And the reason being is because it's a little bit less blended in with the turret here, and the armor is a bit weaker. Now, this isn't a great shot because from these very angles, you can shoot here or here, which would destroy the entire Commander's Cupola, the turret crew, all of that, and probably get an ammo rack, whereas the Commander's Cupola shot wouldn't likely be or wouldn't necessarily get an ammo rack. Now that being said, if that is the only shot that you have, especially from the side or the rear, it is a perfectly good shot to make. It's just there are better shots when facing the side or the rear if you have the entire tank in your view, and as that reason I could not include it as one of the main weak spots in this guide. So this all being said, weak spot number 5 will be for those with over 250 millimeters of armor penetration, typically with conventional shells like APHE or AP, or if you have more advanced shells, you can certainly make this shot as well, like Heat FS or Sabo ammunition. And what I specifically mean, I'll use the Tiger II 10.5 as an example, being that has 251 millimeters of armor pen, is if you shoot to the right of the turret, as you can see right here, there's a little bit of a flat part, or not flat part, but a little bit of a bulge as typical of a lot of Soviet tanks. You can shoot right there and go right in and destroy the entire crew. Typically, if it doesn't destroy the driver, it will kill the entire turret crew, which will more or less render the IS-3 useless. So that being said, of course, that will be the best shot for APHE or AP ammunition. Typically at this BR, you will have APHE ammunition, of course, if you do not have advanced shell types. Now that being said, if you do have advanced shell types, this opens up a bit more. So the DM13 is a Sabo type of round, and you can just kind of shoot through that with ease, as you can see right there. It will kill, if I'm not mistaken, the loader, but it won't kill anyone else. That kind of leads me to my weak spot 5 part 2. Now, more or less the entire front of this tank becomes pretty much available if you have Sabo or Heat FS. I would avoid shooting underneath, so the lower glacis plate right here, if you can, because it will cause limited damage if it penetrates. Now, possibly the better shell to penetrate the IS-3 front will be a Heat FS round, especially considering that they do not care about any sort of distance requirements, being that they have a totally different way of penetrating tanks compared to a Sabo round. So you can more or less just kind of shoot anywhere on the front. I would specifically shoot the flatter parts of the front or the pike nose here. You could again shoot the lower glacis. I would not aim for that if I was you, but again, you could kind of do that and you would likely get a mobility kill. Alternatively, you can shoot HESH ammunition at the IS-3 front, and it should do damage, although it will be limited. So if you have any sort of advanced ammunition, I would more or less go for Sabo ammunition, because that will cause the most damage. But if not, and you have APHE, especially if you have high amounts of armor pen, this shot right here should be able to take out the entire turret crew and disable any sort of offensive capability on the IS-3. Now, this all being said, with the weak spots out of the way, for tactics, you'll want to disable the massive gun by shooting it first and foremost, especially if you expect to have a tough time penning this tank, doubly so if you're close to it. Follow this up with a flank and a shot to the lower chassis weak spot as mentioned earlier in this video. The IS-3 is ridiculously slow and has a very slow turret traverse, even when fully upgraded and even with an ace crew. Take advantage of this with medium and light tanks to exploit the weak spots on the IS-3. Heck, most heavy tanks in War Thunder are actually substantially more agile than the IS-3, with the Mouse being one of the few tanks that are not more agile. Now, if you do not have the aforementioned shot as an option, such as if you're immobilized, I would go for one of the small frontal weak spots mentioned earlier in this video, being that this provides the possibility, however slim, of a kill against the IS-3, or you could simply damage it severely. But this said, typically the best way to kill an IS-3 is not only to isolate it, but to bring your allies along with you to beat it. This might not always be a possibility, but try to keep your friends close if you suspect an IS-3 is in the area. If not, and you need to flank the IS-3, destroying a track will render this tank nearly immobile, allowing you to take it out from the side or the rear, whichever you'd prefer. But in any case, I would destroy its cannon first and foremost, especially if you've been seen by the IS-3 or are anywhere near its brawling range. After you destroy its cannon, again, destroy it from the side or the rear, whichever you'd prefer, and it should be an easy kill. But that being said, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Every single interaction from you guys, whether it's a like, comment, subscription, or even just a simple view, really means the world to me, and I appreciate all the effort that you guys have put in being very supportive of my channel and all the comments and everything like that. But either way, I will be signing out for the night, so thanks again, everyone. Be excellent to each other, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.